Now, the Prince and Princess of Wales have issued their first public statement.
Just 5 minutes ago, the doors of Windsor Lodge had officially closed behind Queen Camilla. The final keys had been laid down. The locks had been changed. All the rooms, the management accounts, and the access points had been brought back under the direct control of the palace. The last boxes were being loaded onto trucks, while Camilla's personal staff silently left the estate one by one. But this was no ordinary move. Camilla did not leave Windsor Lodge voluntarily. She was forced to relinquish control after an internal review orchestrated by Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. All unapproved renovations had been suspended. Camilla's personal staff no longer had access to areas previously under their control. Camilla had been convinced William and Catherine would never dare do this. She believed any action against her would leave King Charles III in an indefensible position. She believed her status as Queen, the King's name, and the long-standing silence of the staff would be enough to prevent any further investigation. But William and Catherine didn't go on television to attack her. They didn't make angry accusations. They did something far more dangerous. They demanded to see the records. Every invoice, every personnel directive, every access control order, and every residency agreement was laid out on the table. And among those documents, William and Catherine found a detail that could shatter Camilla's entire control over Windsor Lodge. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel if you want to follow the full story and leave a comment, letting us know where you're following this story from. Because the crisis didn't begin with a renovation or a secret invoice. It began when Catherine realized that some items belonging to the two most important women in her family's history had disappeared from Windsor Lodge. For weeks before the doors of Windsor Lodge officially closed, changes inside the estate unfolded so slowly that almost no one realized the full extent of their impact. Initially, it was just a few minor adjustments. A room was rearranged. An old portrait was moved to another hallway. Some new furniture appeared. Then came more expensive renovation staff changes and increasingly stringent access regulations. Queen Camilla's office began to act as if Windsor Lodge was no longer a shared space for the royal family, but had become her personal residence. Long-serving staff were reassigned or replaced. Camilla's private guests were given priority access to rooms previously reserved for family gatherings. Some members of the royal family had to verify their names before being allowed into areas they had previously been able to access without permission. No one publicly objected. Many staff members believed King Charles III had granted Camilla extensive powers. Others simply feared that questioning it might cost them their long-held positions. No one wanted to be the first to say a queen had overstepped her boundaries. But Catherine began to notice the gaps. While reviewing a familiar area of Windsor Lodge, she discovered that several items that had once been there were missing. These weren't ordinary decorative objects. They were directly connected to two of the most important women in the family's history: Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana. Some picture frames were gone from the shelves. Some mementos had been removed from display cases. Items that had remained untouched for years were now gone without a word. Catherine didn't jump to conclusions. She asked staff whether the items had been moved for preservation or repair. Initially, the answers were vague. Some said they didn't know. Others suggested it was just part of a plan to reorganize Windsor Lodge. Some even avoided eye contact with Catherine when she asked questions. Then an employee secretly approached her. The employee whispered that the items hadn't been lost. They had been carefully packed, labeled, moved into storage, and prepared for transport to another location. The entire process was carried out on instructions from Camilla's private office. William wasn't consulted. Neither was Catherine. Even more concerning was that these items weren't Camilla's personal property. They belonged to the family history, to the memories of Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana, and to a legacy that no individual had the right to quietly discard. Catherine remained calm in front of the employee. She only asked one thing: bring her all the records. Over the following days, the first documents began to appear on her desk. There were inventory lists, renovation instructions, personnel adjustment records, and access restriction directives. There was also a written protest from the Windsor Lodge management, warning that certain items could not be moved without the family's consent. A formal warning had been sent to Camilla's office, and that office received it. But despite the warning, the packing and moving continued. It was then that Catherine understood she was no longer dealing with a simple misunderstanding. Someone had known the limits, been informed of them, yet decided to cross them. Nevertheless, Catherine still believed the crisis could be resolved discreetly before William was forced to intervene and before King Charles was drawn into a public confrontation. She contacted Camilla privately, but the answer Catherine received turned the last vestiges of caution into an inevitable confrontation. Instead of presenting the newly collected documents directly to Prince William, Catherine decided to give Camilla one last chance to resolve the matter quietly. She didn't want King Charles III to be put in an awkward position between his royal responsibilities and his relationship with his wife. More importantly, Catherine understood that if this dispute erupted publicly too soon, the reputation of the entire royal family would suffer. So she sent a private message to Camilla. The content was not threatening. Catherine simply proposed 4 very clear things: halt all ongoing repairs, return the moved items to their original positions, restore normal access for family members, and wait for William and the Windsor Lodge management to complete their review before making any further changes. It was a proposal intended to keep everything within the palace walls, but the answer Catherine received was completely contrary to what she had hoped for. Camilla not only refused, but also asserted that Windsor Lodge was under her management, and that Catherine should focus on her family and her own responsibilities, instead of interfering in the affairs there. There was no explanation for the missing items, no offer to review the records, nor was there any indication that Camilla's office would halt the ongoing changes. A few days later, the two agreed to meet in a private room with no secretary, no assistant waiting outside, and no cameras recording the conversation. Catherine entered the meeting with a stack of documents in her hand. She calmly placed each document on the table and presented her findings one by one. Several items belonging to Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana had been moved without the family's consent. Staff who had served Windsor Lodge for many years were being replaced or transferred. Access for some family members had changed significantly. Renovations continued despite written warnings from management. Catherine didn't demand an immediate explanation from Camilla. She only hoped things would stop before the consequences became more serious. But Camilla remained unmoved. She asserted her right to decide on staffing, approve repairs, rearrange rooms, manage guest access, and run Windsor Lodge as she deemed appropriate. To Camilla, Catherine's calmness wasn't a sign of strength. She saw it as hesitation. She believed Catherine would never let things escalate to the point of a formal review. The meeting ended without any agreement. In the days that followed, instead of mitigating the changes, Camilla's office continued to tighten its control. A family visit was canceled at the last minute. 2 longtime employees were informed that their positions were under review. Some rooms previously reserved for family gatherings were repurposed for private guests. New assistants began checking access lists in areas previously reserved exclusively for members of the royal family. Even the way instructions were communicated changed. Many instructions were no longer sent through the usual management channels, but instead via private messages, making archiving and cross-referencing more difficult later on. The atmosphere at Windsor Lodge changed as well. Longtime employees refrained from talking to each other in the hallways. Many feared that a single ill-timed comment could cost them their jobs. It was at that moment that Catherine realized this dispute could no longer be handled with goodwill alone. She began documenting every event in chronological order, every canceled appointment, every personnel change, every request to restrict access, and every response from Camilla's office was recorded in a separate file, complete with dates and relevant documentation. Catherine was no longer playing the role of mediator. She was quietly building a dossier whose details could be verified should a formal investigation actually begin. While Camilla believed the opposition had been completely quelled and her control was becoming increasingly secure, a former Windsor Lodge employee decided to appear with entirely different documents. What this person brought would transform the matter from a mere royal disagreement into a thorough review of finances, authority, and accountability. The documents the former employee brought weren't thick, but just the first few pages were enough to completely change the nature of the case. Up until then, any controversy surrounding Windsor Lodge could have been explained as a disagreement over management decoration or use of the space. Camilla could have said she was simply improving the residence. Her assistants could have called the staff changes a reorganization. The rearranged rooms could have been seen as a matter of personal preference. But the bills on the table weren't about preferences. They were about money. The former employee stated that the renovations weren't solely paid for by Camilla's personal funds. A portion of the costs had been channeled into the royal maintenance system under descriptions that didn't accurately reflect the nature of the work. Personal decorations were listed as structural repairs. New furniture was listed as necessary replacements. Changes made to cater to Camilla's private guests appeared under the expense code intended for official Windsor Lodge operations. Even more concerning, some staff members who were normally paid for general duties had been reassigned to serve Camilla's staff directly. When Catherine placed the documents before Prince William, she didn't need to explain much. William sat silently reading each page. He showed no anger, no shouting, no outbursts. But his questions grew shorter and more precise. Who approved these payments? Who authorized the maintenance code changes? Who signed the order to reassign staff? Who decided to restrict the family's access? And who authorized the packing up of items related to Princess Diana to be moved out of Windsor Lodge? Each answer led to the same place, Queen Camilla's private office. From that point on, William no longer viewed this as a conflict between Catherine and Camilla. He considered it an official matter concerning property, personnel, budget, and authority within the royal family. He demanded that all documents be preserved. No records were to be altered. No invoices were to be removed from the system. Those involved in the approval process had to be clearly identified, even if they were merely following verbal instructions. It was during the process of comparing the inventory list with the items that had been moved that William saw a symbol that made him stop. It was the code for a sealed box. The box wasn't large, but the accompanying records indicated it contained a personal item that had once belonged to Princess Diana. It had been carefully packed, labeled, and prepared for transport to a location other than Windsor Lodge. There was no signature from William. No notification had been sent to Catherine, nor any documentation proving the family's consent. William demanded the box be brought immediately. When it was placed before him, the room fell almost completely silent. William stared at the shipping label for a few seconds longer than usual. He didn't open the box right away. What caught his attention wasn't just the item inside, but the fact that someone had assumed it could be moved without telling him. That was the moment the investigation took on a more personal dimension. For William, the box contained more than just a memento. It represented the memory of his late mother, parts of family history that couldn't be rearranged simply because they made someone uncomfortable. Camilla could change the curtains. She could suggest renovating a room. But silently moving Diana's legacy crossed a whole different line. Even so, William didn't confront Camilla immediately. He knew that emotions, however justified, were not enough to end a queen's control over Windsor Lodge. If he wanted to act, he needed something Camilla couldn't dispute: a written clause. William requested the reopening of all original records relating to the estate, including the residency agreement terms of use funding, ownership amendments, and any documents that had ever been used to prove Camilla's long-term management rights. Camilla believed those documents would confirm her position, but deep within the archives, an administrator discovered a clause that Camilla's office apparently had never read. That clause was in the appendix of the residency record, written in such dry, bureaucratic language that it was easily overlooked. But after just a few minutes of reading, the archivist understood that it could completely reverse the balance of power at Windsor Lodge. Camilla did not have an unconditional lease. Neither had she ever been granted permanent ownership. What the record showed was only a conditional use agreement, valid as long as the family agreed, and the property continued to be managed for its intended purpose. This meant Camilla was permitted to reside at Windsor Lodge, but could not consider herself the owner. She could not turn public property into personal property, could not use royal staff for private needs without approval, and could not prevent family members from accessing a place that was under public management. At the end of the document was an even more important clause. The residency permit could be revoked if the user made changes beyond their authority, spent money without approval, abused personnel, restricted access, or moved protected assets. Each line in the clause seemed to directly correspond to what Catherine had recorded. But William wasn't in a hurry to announce the findings. He had his legal advisors examine every word and compare it to the entire collection of records. Invoices were placed alongside funding conditions. Staff transfer orders were compared to personnel usage regulations. Lists of restricted access were placed alongside clauses guaranteeing family access. Even canceled visits were included in the timeline. William wanted to ensure that if Camilla denied one detail, 5 other documents could still prove the opposite. Only after the advisors confirmed the clause remained in effect was a formal meeting arranged. Camilla entered with her usual composure. She still seemed convinced this was just another unpleasant exchange and that William would eventually stop before it affected King Charles III. But this time, William didn't bring a complaint. He brought files. The documents were laid out in order: renovation bills, staff transfer orders, access control directives, packing lists, and the original residency terms. William asked Camilla what documents she relied on to make those decisions. She replied that Charles knew about the changes and had never objected. William asked again if there was any decree, signed letter, record, or contract amendment confirming that authority. Camilla couldn't produce any documents. She only reiterated that Charles's consent didn't need to be documented for every minor change to a family residence. But William didn't accept that explanation. He made it clear that Windsor Lodge wasn't a personal gift from the king to Camilla. Charles's silence couldn't automatically equate to ownership, and a private conversation couldn't erase the limitations stipulated in the formal agreement. Camilla began to change tactics. She no longer argued about the paperwork. Instead, she warned William of the consequences. If the investigation continued, Charles could be seen as a king who couldn't control his own family. The public would question who truly held power at Windsor. The press could turn an internal dispute into a crisis of the monarchy. Camilla knew William always wanted to protect his father, and she believed that would be the point that would make him hesitate. But William didn't react as she expected. He understood the danger to Charles very well. However, he also understood that allowing someone to use the king's name to overstep boundaries was far more dangerous. The meeting ended without an agreement. The clause had been found, and the absolute power Camilla once believed she possessed was now merely an undocumented assumption. But to truly activate the revocation clause, William and Catherine still had to prove one last thing. Camilla not only misunderstood her authority, she had been clearly warned more than once, and yet deliberately persisted. the decisive evidence didn't come from a confession from Camilla. It came from how Catherine had quietly organized all the documents in chronological order. After the confrontation, she handed William all the files she had collected in the preceding weeks. Each document was marked with the date received the person in charge, and the response from Camilla's office. In the middle of the file were 3 separate warnings. The first warning concerned personnel. Windsor Lodge management had clearly stated that senior staff could not be dismissed or transferred without the family management's approval. But after that warning, 2 long-serving employees were still informed that their jobs were under review. The second warning concerned finances. Camilla's office was instructed not to use the general maintenance account for changes for personal purposes or decoration. However, invoices provided by Catherine and former employees showed that these expenses continued to appear under generic codes, such as repairs, replacements, or structural maintenance. The third warning was the most serious. No items linked to family history were permitted to be moved before ownership was verified, and the necessary consent was recorded. That document was forwarded to Camilla's office. The system acknowledged it had been received, but shortly afterward, the packing order was issued. Camilla's team tried to explain that these warnings were merely for reference, that no one had explicitly stated that changes had to stop immediately, and that some decisions might have been interpreted differently between departments. That argument persisted until a longtime employee stepped forward. This person had retained a copy of a signed directive from Camilla's office. The document instructed staff to complete the transfer of the disputed items before William and Catherine's next visit. The timing on the document brought silence to the room. The warning had been sent beforehand. Camilla's office had received it. The move order was issued afterward, and the deadline for completion was set just before William and Catherine were scheduled to arrive at Windsor Lodge. This meant the items weren't simply being moved for repair, nor was there any indication of an administrative error. Everything had been planned after the warning was given, with a timing that would have made it difficult for the family to detect before the process was complete. From this, the possibility that Camilla had simply misunderstood her authority was almost ruled out. Nevertheless, her advisors clung to one final argument. King Charles III had given his verbal consent. According to them, the king knew about the renovations, knew Camilla was running the estate, and had never asked her to stop. Therefore, Camilla's decisions should be considered tacitly approved. William requested a thorough examination of all records that could substantiate this claim. Officials searched for royal decrees, signed letters, notes from Charles's private secretary, meeting minutes, amendments to the residence agreement, and any log entries confirming that long-term management had been granted to Camilla. No documents were found. There was no document transferring ownership. There were no provisions allowing her to use the common funds at her discretion. There were no exemptions from the family's property, and there were no directives restricting access for William, Catherine, or other members. The palace lawyers then reached a clear conclusion. The residency agreement could be terminated based on its original conditions. No Camilla's consent was required. No Charles needed to sign a new decree. Repeated breaches of personnel finances, access rights, and protected property were sufficient to trigger the revocation clause. William still demanded final confirmation. He wanted to know if Camilla could delay the decision by invoking her position as queen, her relationship with the king, or an unrecorded exchange. The question was sent late that evening. The answer returned that night. None of that could invalidate the written agreement. Residency could be legally revoked, and the household administration had the right to reclaim Windsor Lodge as soon as the formal notice expired. That was the final moment of the inquiry. From that point on, William and Catherine no longer questioned what Camilla had done or on what authority she had relied. That evening, they sat down before a complete set of documents and began drafting the text that would end her control of Windsor Lodge. The official announcement was finalized that very night. There were no harsh words or any personal attacks. The documents simply cited verified terms and the conclusions reached by the legal team. William and Catherine demanded an immediate cessation of all unapproved work at Windsor Lodge. The family management would take over full control of the property. Camilla's private team had to complete their departure by the stipulated deadline. All rooms had to be opened for inspection. No property was to be removed until verification was complete, and all keys had to be handed over before the deadline. The announcement was delivered to Windsor Lodge in absolute silence. Immediately after reading the document, Camilla ordered the main doors closed. Phone calls were made incessantly. Assistants were instructed not to speak to anyone outside. One member of the team still believed the decision would be reversed before sunrise, as no one thought William would let things go to this final step. But dawn came without any calls changing the decision. At the appointed time, a palace car slowly drove through the gates of Windsor Lodge. Inside the car were the inventory team, 2 household managers, and a security supervisor, tasked with overseeing the entire handover process. No cameras. No reporters, no photographers. The palace wanted to complete everything according to procedure rather than turn it into a public spectacle. Inside the estate, Camilla's assistants began packing up clothes, personal files, personal photos, and items identified as personal property. Meanwhile, the inventory team opened each catalog, comparing each box against the pre-prepared records. The process went smoothly until they entered the display area. The first arguments arose around a silver picture frame, 2 wall paintings, an antique writing desk, and a letter cabinet. Camilla's team claimed these were all gifts specifically for her. The household managers made only one request. If they were personal property, they should present proof. No documentation was provided. According to procedure, the items had to remain at Windsor Lodge until ownership was verified. There was no arguing. No one raised their voice. All decisions were recorded. Nearly mid-morning, Camilla appeared. She requested to see the highest-ranking person in charge of the inventory team and declared that the handover could not proceed because she was still in talks with King Charles III. The household manager calmly replied that the family discussions did not alter the validity of the official notice. The deadline had begun and all procedures had to continue until a new document replaced it. Camilla then turned to criticizing Catherine. According to the story, she believed Catherine had used the file to humiliate her and that William was using the memory of Princess Diana as a reason to eliminate her influence at Windsor Lodge. But the officials did not refute, neither did they argue. They simply continued working according to what was written in the file. As the inspection neared completion, only one room remained unopened. An assistant of Camilla held the final key and refused to hand it over. The security supervisor opened the file, pointed to the clause confirmed the previous evening, and announced that no rooms were exempt from inspection. If the key wasn't handed over voluntarily, the room would still be opened according to procedure, and the refusal would be fully documented in the minutes. The room fell silent. The assistant turned to look at Camilla. She said nothing. After a few seconds, Camilla simply nodded. The final key was placed on the table. It wasn't just a key. In the story, it became symbolic of the moment Camilla's control over Windsor Lodge officially ended. By late afternoon, the last boxes were loaded onto trucks under the supervision of the inventory team. The assistants left the estate one by one, and the Windsor Lodge gates closed in silence. Camilla had left, but for William and Catherine, there remained one final decision, more difficult than the handover itself. They had to choose between remaining silent to protect King Charles III or revealing the truth before a completely different version of the story spread. When the last carriages left Windsor Lodge, the residence did not return to its former quiet. The silence no longer stemmed from the staff's fear or the authority of a private office. It came from the restoration of order. William ordered the restoration of every room, every item, and every altered record. Items associated with Queen Elizabeth II were returned to their original places. The box relating to Princess Diana was found intact, with the shipping label still on its surface, a reminder that even a slight delay could have resulted in the loss of a part of the family memory. Catherine did not see this as a victory over Camilla. For her, it was an affirmation that trust did not equate to ownership, that status could not replace authority, and that family history could not be erased simply because it made one uncomfortable. But the story was not over. King Charles III had not publicly answered how much he knew, and during the review of the repair account, a secret bill was discovered approved just 2 days after the final warning sent to Camilla. The signatory's name has yet to be revealed. Do you think William and Catherine were right to make the matter public? Or should they have kept quiet to protect Charles? Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this story. Thank you for watching.